From presidents smuggling wine to the White House, to showing up drunk at their own inaugurations, to installing a Diet Coke button on the Oval Office desk, this is the wild history of every U.S. president's favorite drink. And trust me, by the end you'll be wondering how this country even survived its first 100 years, because early America was basically held together by whiskey, wine, and questionable decisions. We start with George Washington, a man who didn't just sip Madeira wine, he practically built a lifelong relationship with it. He loved this sweet Portuguese wine so much that he imported it by the barrel. And when the British slapped heavy taxes on it, Washington didn't stop drinking, he just smuggled it instead. That's right, America's first president was also America's first presidential bootlegger. John Adams wasn't any more sober. This man started every morning, yes, morning, with a full glass of hard cider. He claimed it kept him energized and healthy, though his doctor probably would have disagreed. After the Boston Tea Party, Adams boycotted tea completely, calling it British poison, and switched entirely to coffee. Nothing says patriotism like changing your caffeine source. Thomas Jefferson, meanwhile, turned drinking into a science. While living in France, Jefferson fell deeply in love with fine European wines, Bordeaux, Burgundy, Chianti, the good stuff. He took notes on every bottle he ever tasted: flavor, color, aroma, acidity. He didn't just drink wine, he studied it. Jefferson was basically America's first sommelier, and honestly, probably the most elegant alcoholic of his era. Then we have James Madison, who kept things simple because he really didn't have a choice. At barely 100 pounds, one drink would flatten him. So he stuck to coffee and tea and left the heavy drinking to everyone else. But James Monroe wasn't everyone else. He picked up fancy drinking habits during his time in France, especially champagne and Bordeaux. When he became president, he ordered over 1,000 bottles for the White House. Imagine explaining that to the taxpayers. John Quincy Adams took Madeira wine tasting to superhuman levels. In one legendary blind taste test, he identified 11 out of 14 different Madeiras correctly. The man had the taste buds of a literal wine god. Andrew Jackson, on the other hand, was the opposite of classy. He practically ran on whiskey. At his 1829 inauguration, thousands of supporters burst into the White House, drank whiskey punch, broke furniture, and turned the place into a muddy, chaotic bar fight. Early America was truly wild. Martin Van Buren wasn't much different. Nicknamed Blue Whiskey Van, he was famous for his iron liver and ability to stay sharp even after several drinks. Unfortunately, his opponent made fun of him for drinking cider and living like a common man. That backfired when voters loved it and made hard cider the symbol of the election. William Henry Harrison rode that hard cider image straight into the White House, then died 31 days later. Tough luck. Next, John Tyler brought champagne back into style, hosting lavish parties filled with music and bubbly. But when James Polk came in, the fun ended immediately. He banned alcohol at the White House. Guests called his wife Sahara Sarah because her events were dry, very dry. Zachary Taylor preferred something completely innocent, cold milk. But ironically, that innocent drink may have killed him. After drinking iced milk and eating cherries washed in contaminated water on a hot July day, he became violently ill and died 5 days later. Survived war, defeated by bad milk. Millard Fillmore barely drank alcohol at all, just tea and water. Not much to say about the man's drinking habits, but hey, at least his stomach was safe. Franklin Pierce, sadly, drank everything. After losing his young son, Pierce fell deeply into alcoholism. Later, after leaving office, he said, "What can an ex-president do but get drunk?" His drinking eventually led to fatal liver disease. James Buchanan wanted to be Washington too. 0 in terms of Madeira obsession. His mansion had a massive wine cellar packed with Madeira bottles. He even studied the island where it was made. In complete contrast, Abraham Lincoln rarely touched alcohol at all. Even at fancy dinners, while everyone toasted with wine, Honest Abe lifted a glass of water. If sobriety had a mascot, it would be Lincoln. But Andrew Johnson balanced that out by showing up drunk at his own vice presidential inauguration. He slurred, rambled, and embarrassed himself in front of Congress and the Supreme Court. Even Lincoln couldn't save that moment. Ulysses S. Grant loved whiskey, especially Old Crow. Lincoln once joked, "Find out what whiskey he drinks and send a barrel to my other generals," after Grant's battlefield victories. Rutherford B. Hayes brought sobriety back thanks to his wife, Lemonade Lucy, who completely banned alcohol from the White House. James Garfield reversed that ban as soon as he arrived, bringing beer back onto the menu. Chester A. Arthur preferred elegant drinks, fine liquors, smooth wines, and stylish cocktails. He was known as Elegant Arthur, after all. Grover Cleveland wasn't elegant at all, he was a beer guy. In fact, he once made a deal with a friend to limit themselves to 4 beers a day, but they quickly changed the rule to 4 tankards, because apparently glasses were too small. Benjamin Harrison enjoyed tea, and William McKinley liked stylish cocktails, including one created in his honor called the McKinley's Delight, which was strong enough to knock out a moose. Teddy Roosevelt mixed his own mint juleps with mint grown in the White House garden. He made them strong, very strong. William Taft loved ginger ale so much he drank 4 bottles at a single lunch. Woodrow Wilson enforced prohibition but secretly enjoyed his own private stash of scotch. Congress literally had to approve moving his liquor collection after he left office because transporting alcohol was illegal. Warren G. Harding completely ignored prohibition, hosting whiskey-filled poker nights and hiding bottles in his golf bag. Calvin Coolidge kept the White House officially dry but discreetly enjoyed sweet wine on the side. Herbert Hoover made up for his dry presidency by drinking 2 extremely dry martinis every single evening afterward. Franklin D. Roosevelt loved dirty martinis and even played bartender for Churchill and Stalin. Harry Truman started his mornings with bourbon mixed into orange juice, calling it his eye-opener. Dwight Eisenhower preferred calm evenings with scotch on the rocks. JFK enjoyed Bloody Marys at his Cape Cod beach house and loved Heineken beer. Lyndon B. Johnson drank giant scotch and sodas everywhere he went, including while driving around his Texas ranch, with Secret Service constantly refilling his glass. Richard Nixon drank expensive French wine but secretly kept it for himself while serving guests cheaper bottles. Gerald Ford drank double martinis like a champ, while Jimmy Carter avoided alcohol because of family history and preferred iced tea. Ronald Reagan loved California wine and promoted Napa Valley worldwide. George H. W. Bush enjoyed vodka martinis and cold beer at baseball games. Bill Clinton brought back British influence with his favorite drink, the snakebite, a mix of lager and hard cider. George W. Bush drank heavily in his youth but quit alcohol completely at age 40, switching to Coke Zero. Barack Obama loved beer so much that he brewed the first ever White House homebrew using honey from Michelle's beehives. Donald Trump, who doesn't drink alcohol at all, became famous for drinking up to 12 Diet Cokes a day, delivered by a special Diet Coke button on the Resolute desk. And finally, Joe Biden, another lifelong non-drinker, fuels himself with bright orange Gatorade everywhere he goes. And there you have it, over 2 centuries of American presidents, each with their own drink of choice, from whiskey warriors and wine nerds to Diet Coke kings and Gatorade champions.